Hello, time for another Man and Great book review. Today's book is One Good Turn, A Natural History of the Screw and Screwdriver by Witold Rybczynski, published by Simon & Schuster in 2000, and it's 176 pages. Yes, believe it or not, this is an entire book about screwdrivers. Witold Rybczynski is a architect and college professor, and he's written seriously. He's a wonderful writer. He's written a whole series of interesting books about architecture and design. And this book kind of had a unique beginning. In the year 2000, he was commissioned by the New York Times to write an article. They did a whole issue on the millennium. Of course, that was a big thing, the year 2000, starting a new millennium. He was commissioned to write an article on the greatest tool of the last 1,000 years. And as he tells in this book, he started researching, and what he found to his surprise that almost all the common hand tools that we've used predate 1,000 years ago. The saw, the hammer, the plane, those all date back to ancient Egypt or ancient Greece. They're well over 1,000 years old. What he did find was the screwdriver is probably the last major hand tool to be developed. It didn't really appear until the Middle Ages. Before then, people used wooden pegs to fasten things with. They took a wooden peg and just hammered it in place. And the screwdriver was a big step up from that. It was much more efficient. But screws had to be handmade and were expensive and difficult to make. And so the screwdriver and the screw really didn't catch on until the late 18th century, when people finally figured out how to mass produce screws out of both wood and metal. And so he chose to do a history of the screwdriver, and he talks about, and the screw, talks about how it was used in the Middle Ages. One of the first uses for screws was actually to hold guns together. The screw was also an important part of the printing press, and it was screwed down to press the metal type onto the paper. There's a whole fascinating chapter here about the Phillips screwdriver. Everyone's heard of the Phillips screwdriver, but they don't know who it was named after. Phillips screwdriver was actually named after a man named Henry Phillips, and as so often the case, he didn't actually invent the Phillips screwdriver. McDonald's wasn't actually owned by the McDonald's brothers. It was owned by Ray Kroc, who bought them out. Well, the same thing happened here. A man named Henry Phillips bought a patent for the Phillips screwdriver from a guy named John Thompson. So John Thompson actually invented the Phillips screwdriver, and Henry Phillips bought out the patent for that and tweaked it a little bit. But the Phillips screwdriver really didn't catch on until the mid-1930s, when the Chrysler Car Company decided to switch from using flathead screws to using Phillips screws to put their cars together. And what they found was the Phillips screws were much faster to install. It actually cut production time by 30%. And so that, of course, saved them a lot of money. And when other car companies found out about this, they all switched to using Phillips screws in their car assembly. So, and after that, there was a huge demand for Phillips screwdrivers and screws after that. So there's all kinds of little fascinating little stories about that. And the book at the end has a glossary of various tools from the Middle Ages, all of which were hand-drawn by Rybczynski himself. So it's a really fun little book. Rybczynski is a very engaging writer, and even though you might think, well, I don't care about screws or screwdrivers, you'll actually find, if you read this book, it's really interesting, and you learn a lot about history, because it goes back to the ancient times and how the idea of the screwdriver finally developed. So if you're interested in nonfiction and you want something a little offbeat, and you've never read any books by Rybczynski, you'll really enjoy this one. I think it's a good starting place. The book is One Good Turn. The author is Witold Rybczynski. This has been another Man and Great book review. Thanks for watching.